Anyways, continuing here on this Masonic speech that was delivered in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in 1921, printed for private distribution at that time. So, yep, the Dream of the Ages talked about so far, how it's basically a reference to this coming New World Order, and so this is where I was at. Oh wait. Yep, so ahead of myself here. There we go. Can we apply the vision of St. John to the America of today and find that its requirements are realized? The length of a nation, what is that? Manifestly, it is continuity. It is physical strength, the strong, persistent efficiency of a people characterized by health and strength, by vigor and endurance. The breadth of a nation, what is that? Shall we not say the development of mere vital vigor into intellectual potentiality, the thing that stands for education, training, civilization, culture, the power of mind, the potency of thought that makes a people not only virile, but wise, not only persistent, but crowned with knowledge, and the height of a nation, what is that? Shall we not say the aspiration of a nation's soul, the realization of a nation's conscience, the riding as upon the very sky of the dominating purpose that fails if it does not lift mankind up where he stands upon the threshold of the infinite itself? Let us judge our America of today by these dimensions. 1. The length line of America is faulty and frail because we have become strangely indoctrinated with the notion that our duty in life was to look after things, that God had monopolized the task of taking care of people. During the 18 months that we were in actual warfare, we lost in battle, dead, 45,000 men. During these same 18 months, 450,000 children died in America under 1 year of age 10 children for every soldier, and most of them need not have died, save as we, in our indifference and carelessness, let them go. 300,000 children die every year before they are 12 months old. 150,000 of them live but a single month. A child born today in the United States has not as much chance to live a year as a man of 80, to live a month as a man of 90. Last year, 1,250,000 people died in the United States of sickness. Probably 2/3 of that death was unnecessary. It was caused by preventable sickness and avoidable disease. It was the result of defective civilization. Of our present population, if things continue as they are, 6% at least will die eventually of one disease. We average 150,000 yearly of people who die of tuberculosis. We have a continual sick list of 1.5 million and a record of 500,000 constantly bedridden from that one disease. 75% of that multitude of death occurs between the ages of 16 and 45, the most useful and productive part of the life of a citizen. That one disease costs the United States $1.5 billion every year, and yet tuberculosis is not a visitation of God. It is not an unavoidable inheritance from one's ancestors. It is the result of defective civilization. The way that we allow people to live, the things that they wear, what they eat and drink, the selfishness that results in bad housing, poor drainage, polluted water, tainted food. These are the things that cut down the length dimension of our life, and not the wrath of God or the inscrutable wisdom of an overruling providence. Did you hear that? So by saying that, he's suggesting that we do something to change, I guess, do something about the freedom of people that want to dress how they want to dress, and what they eat and drink. Think about what he said there. I really don't like this phone, to tell you the truth. I use this one because maybe if I make it brighter, will that help? But it's really kind of looks like shit, honestly. It looks better now, but I can hardly see me. And the quality, but But it's like, it's like our modern medical establishment, right? They have the same mentality. It's why all this medical tyranny is going on. It's where my finger is. If you can read that. So, in order to do something about this, this selfishness, they have to bring in tyranny. So, again, one of the most interesting of all the reports covering our service in the war is that of the Provost Marshal General relative to the selective draft. Upon the records of that department are written the war histories of nearly 24 million Americans. It is the first and only record of the manpower of this nation. Of the first 2.5 million men, 30% were rejected from military service because of physical disability. Up to the time of the Armistice, 35.5% of the men examined were rejected as physically unfit. A nation can't stand still any more than an atom. Everything in this world must either goon or go back. And the nation is surely turning backward, lessening the vigor of its lifeline, which is content to have 35% of its young manhood physically insufficient and to lose 1 million of its people every year by preventable disease. The highest possible duty of the state is the production and development of normal, healthy children. The next highest duty is the protection and conservation of human life. So, and what he's saying here is it's the highest duty of the state for the protection and conservation of human life, which is our modern medical establishment believes as well, which is why, the is becoming more and more mandatory. Because then their mentality, and then the dupes mentality, the globalists are just, they're all to, I don't want to say, you pretty much know, right? I don't want my video taken down for medical misinformation. But anyways, we know that the loving elites, want what's best for us because they love us. We know that they want to, make the world a little smaller. Human population a little bit smaller, but the dupes at the bottom, just like these secret societies, right? You got the top, and they really believe in all this dark stuff, and think that they're just gods that want to rule the world. They convince the dupes at the bottom that they're out to create this wonderful utopia, or we're just trying to make the world a better place. We're just trying to save everybody. And, we need these vaccines, and you're selfish for not wanting to take the vaccine. You're helping to spread the Delta variant. Oops, I hope that didn't get, I hope I don't get my video taken down for being sarcastic there. But, I mean, it's, that's the same mentality. That's the mentality of a control freak. Control freaks, a lot of them don't think that they're in that moment controlling people or that they're being that way. They are tyrants. They think that they are doing what's best for whatever they're controlling. It's this insecure feeling that if they don't control something, then it's going to get out of control. And same mentality here. So the state needs to control our lives for our own good. And remember, in this previous page here, the guy's saying that, defective civilization, the way we allow people to live, the things they wear, and what they eat and drink, and the selfishness that results in bad housing, poor drainage. We got to do something about this. And to the dupe, that would sound like he just cares. But no, it's a control freak. There's nothing wrong with charity, with making things a little bit better. Yeah, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but he's saying that it's the duty of the state here. It's the duty of the government to forcibly take care of us. So anyways, here in America, we have been strangely indifferent to these facts. The next highest duty, protection and conservation of human life. Duty of the state is production and development of normal, healthy children. We have been spending the greater part of our substance in attempting to create wealth, believing somehow that disease and suffering and death were a necessary part of providence. Our average American community spends $2 per capita for fire and police protection. It spends annually from $8 to $10 per capita on education, and yet the country over the last year we spend only 29 cents per capita on the health and protection of the people. Health should be as tangible an asset as comfort or security, or the well-fed satisfaction that comes from proper housing and proper food. 100,000 people died last year in America as a result of accident, and accidents in our modern life are not dispensations of divine providence, but the result of somebody's carelessness. There lies the trouble of it all. These things could be avoided if people only knew. They could be prevented if, in addition to knowing, people only cared. Ignorance, indifference, and carelessness are the foundation of most of our troubles, and absolute selfishness is the other factor in the tragedy. To make civic health as real an asset as civil government, or public health or fire protection, is one of the great fundamental duties of our American life. It is practically a question of education and the simple enforcement of the law. Science traces disease to certain distinct causes, eliminate the causes, and the results no longer exist. Again, this guy is pretty much, I'm just showing, just like I could show in these New Age, some of these New Age publications, maybe I ought to dig them out, that these were the first guys that were for the enforceable, mandated public education of our children. And now they're kind of showing some of this, that they're kind of the very first supporters of big medical health tyranny as well. So, and you can read this if you like. If you can read this on here. If not, I've read stuff twice before when I remade a video. I felt it was goofed up a little bit. Looks good on here so far, but good sewers are more essential for the wholesome community than decorated churches. A pure water supply is a greater treasure than garnered gold. The great need of today is to teach people how to keep clean individually, socially, civically, and morally. The hope of tomorrow lies in making health catching instead of disease. And there's nothing wrong with teaching on people's own free will, that to be clean and to be moral and stuff like that. Nothing wrong with that. But again, you go back pages, he's wanting the state to enforce that. So France bled white, and yet following her ideal in the face of bursting shrapnel and crumbling walls, gathered her children in cellars and in dugouts and kept up her schools. For this, France said, quote, "Children are our last reserve. Their task after the war will be doubled. Doubled should be their preparation today," unquote. The call that comes to you and to me on this feast of St. John is to build up, to strengthen, and to make secure the length dimension of our national life, that strong and steadfast, health and serene America may turn from the decay and destruction that are the result of defective civilization and face her future fit for whatever calls. 2. The breadth dimension is a nation's life. In a nation's life represents its vitality, translated into terms of accomplishment. As in the individual, so in the nation. This translation must apply alike to the bodily vigor, mental potency, and spiritual fervor. In terms of human progress, we call this civilization, culture, enlightenment, the things that constitute in human history an age of irradiation and liberal progress. Liberal progress. That America should have made so remarkable an attainment has been the inspiration of a certain boastfulness, excusable perhaps in our national thought and character because of our consciousness of supreme endowment and limitless possibility. There is no vain glory in our calling ourselves the greatest country on earth. When we simply glance at our eminent domain, flung from ocean to ocean, endowed with productiveness and blessed with fertility, practically inexhaustible, dowered with natural resources whose surface has barely been scratched in their present development, A country with room and reach and resource, our boastfulness was not merely smug complacency, but a consciousness founded in fact. The marvelous way in which, in spite of our unpreparedness, the nation as by a modern miracle leaped into the flaming field of war and in a burst of intensive speed unequaled in modern history, accomplished the task that she set before herself to do, all this added to our supreme self-confidence and our satisfied complacency. As the Great War progressed, in exact ratio with the exhaustion of the belligerent attitudes overseas, we became the marketplace of the world, and even the preliminary settlements have thrown so vast a balance of credit in our favor that we have become the bank of the world. All these things were calculated to breed what is perhaps a characteristic American weakness, an exaggerated opinion of ourselves, and a complacent pride that is too often the precursor of misfortune. It was therefore in the nature of a terrible shock to our self-esteem that the reports of the Surgeon General of the Army should make it possible for General Pershing to say the other day in a public address, quote, "We found it as a result of the draft that more than 30% of the young men of the country, though physically perfect, were illiterate," unquote, and armed. To me, the thought is shocking. Continuing the quote, sorry, goofed. To me, the thought is shocking that there should be certain localities in this nation characterized by such neglect that 1/3 of our young men cannot read and write, unquote. And yet, according to the United States Commissioner of Education, the population of this country, comprising 1/17 of the human beings on earth, spends annually as much money for education as the other 17ths combined. And yet, among the first 3 million men examined for service under the selective draft, more than 700,000 were unable to sign their names or to read the simplest communication in print. The instant reply to this strange and sinister challenge would be, quote, "What could you expect from when our country has filled with millions of illiterate foreigners, and when we have among our population upwards of 12 million Negroes?" Interesting quote, I guess. What could you expect when our country has filled with millions of illiterate foreigners, and when we have among our population upwards of 12 million Negroes, unquote. I'll let you think about that. Unfortunately, the explanation does not hold. In 1915, the figures of the Census Bureau showed that there were in the United States upwards of 6 million persons above the age of 16 who could neither read nor write. 50% of this vast multitude were between the ages of 20 and 40. 59% of them were white. 30% of them, or more than 2 million, were native-born whites. The localization of this illiteracy stamps different sections of the country. Iowa leads the van, with the smallest percentage of illiterates and of any of our states, less than 17 persons per thousands of its total population. There are states where 290 out of every 1,000 are illiterate. New York, with all the vast foreign population and of its great metropolis, showed only 16% of illiterates among men of draft age, while South Carolina registered 49.5% of its draft men unable to read or write. The army of illiterates in America equals the total population of 14 of our states. The number of those above the age of 21 who can neither read nor write would outvote the cities of New York, Chicago, Philadelphia combined, or any single state in the Union outside of New York. What shall we say then of the figures that prove that the United States spends twice as much each year for chewing gum as it does for school books? That it spends last year more for automobiles than for its entire primary and secondary education, that the average teacher's salary is less than that of the average day laborer, and in county districts not more than half as much, and that a thoroughly good housemaid here in Cedar Rapids is paid more for her services than the average rural teacher, who after years of preparation has devoted herself to the training and the education of the children of America. These figures show that either we are not spending enough money on education, vast though our annual outlay is for this purpose, or that we are not getting our money's worth. The fact that we pay more than all the other people in the world put together is of small consequence. The fact of greatest importance is that in spite of that expenditure, these facts can exist. Intelligence and the capacity for absorbing and digesting accurate information is the basis of a useful, rational, and discerning citizenship. the only type that can ensure the stability and perpetuity of a democratic government. It's a republic form of government, not a democratic form of government. But anyways, both tyranny and anarchy thrive upon ignorance. A nation of intelligent free men can never be dominated by either. We have been called the melting pot of the nations. 15 million of our present population are foreign-born, led by varied circumstances that came here seeking in some form or other that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness which has been written down as the charter of this nation. We have professed ourselves glad to have them come. We have thought ourselves an asylum for the distressed and oppressed of the world. Yet, despite the high-sounding syllables with which we tell of this purpose, we have been letting these multitudes pass through our ports of entry, and with the passing, we have abandoned them to the snares and the devices of the labor contractors and the political bosses and the radical agitators. That we and our institutions have not been overwhelmed long ago has been by no means the result of our precaution or any intelligent plan. We have taken no pains to afford these people instruction in America, or in American thought, American ideals, or even in the English language. It has been impossible, hence, to teach them the true meaning of America and Americanism. Thousands of American-born children have all their lives read the Declaration of Independence and Lincoln's Gettysburg speech in German or some other alien tongue. We are now face to face with the imminent danger that has come from this hurried, ill-sorted, undigested influx from overseas. Fed upon revolution and rebellion in their days of tyranny and oppression, they have brought with them to our shores a type of mind that we in America cannot visualize and cannot understand. A mind that in sullen ignorance takes leave of all standards and denies all laws, so that liberty becomes license, justice degenerates into impulse, and individualism in its starkest nakedness bonds itself to heroic outlines and calls itself mutuality and brotherhood. It is in such soil as this that anarchy, Bolshevism, and all their train of decadent philosophies make speedy growth. And again, like I said, read with or listen with discernment. He right here is trying to make it sound like, that they are completely against all this that's going on. Remember that it's order ab chaos, order out of chaos. It's, they're into that Hegelian dialectic. And of course, when writing these to these Master Masons, who many of them are just, porch masons, really, still. Porch masons with that title, Master Mason. You're not really a part of anything or really know what's going on in that brotherhood, unless you're like in the high degrees. This is to make you think that, just like, they're trying to get you to think that they were against the war and bloodshed. In fact, is that they were the ones that pretty much helped get it going. So remember, listen with discernment. These people will deceive. Europe today is facing these perils in a form augmented by disaster, privation, idleness, and despondency. We are facing them not so much as an immediate menace for today as in the light of the future. The only inspiring thought is that amid all these problems we find strength and confidence in adhering to the ideals that our fathers built when they laid the foundation of this nation of ours. If liberty, freedom, and happiness were the crowning towers and the superstructure that they created, beneath that democracy, there's that D word again, and you won't find that D word anywhere in our Constitution. Democracy is really just the precursor to socialism. You'll find out that's why many socialists happen to be Democrats. Lay great substantial facts as so many cornerstones. These were equality, the right to private possession, freedom of religion, the sanctity of the home, and education as the universal duty and privilege of citizenship. We shall never come to the measure of the breadth dimension of our nation's possibility until we realize that for an American, illiteracy is the darkest of all foul blots, that we owe it not simply to the children of our land, but to the multitudes of the foreign-born who have become part of the community life of the nation, and that there shall be expressed to each of them the thought of the nation conveyed in syllables that alone can express its meaning. All Americans must be taught to read and write and think in one language, out of which there shall come the loyalty and the philosophy that underlies our struggle for our ideals. and they who will not read and write and think in that language have no place in America, the exemplar, the synonym of democracy, or the synonym of a constitutional republic. 3, there is left the third dimension, that of height. Shall we say that in our interpretation tonight it stands for the spiritual side of a nation's life, the great ideal conception that is alike to the inspiration and the goal of activity? It is a peculiar thing that every conceivable explanation of the unrest, the dissatisfaction, and disorder that prevails throughout the world has been proposed, except the real one, the one that is the deepest and most important. Centuries ago, the man who, whatever he may have been, was at least wise in his comprehension of the human affairs of his day, wrote, quote, "Where there is no vision, the people perish," unquote. And by that vision, the wise man meant, of course, the comprehension and the following of an ideal, of some great plan upon the trestle board of the ages. The building out of which should produce alike in the individual and in the aggregate of individuals that which we call human society, the constant result of peace and happiness among men. For I may perhaps remind you that peace is not an ideal at all, happiness is not an ideal, contentment is not an ideal. They are states of mind attendant upon the achievement of an ideal. The ideals that produce peace, happiness, and contentment are another 3 in that strange group of 3s, of which I reminded you a little while ago. They are liberty, justice, and righteousness, the conduct of an orderly human society. Without them as creative forces, peace is but a dream. You can't make peace by act of Congress. Treaties and pacts and covenants are mere scraps of paper unless behind them there lies a compelling spiritual force. The prophet who sang the glories of the millennial dream found its dynamic in the conjunction, quote, "Righteousness and peace have met each other," unquote. If the ruin of war is to be rebuilded, if the revelation of war is to be understood, if civilization is to recruit its tottering forces, if it is to go on at all toward the framing of a constructive policy either at home or abroad, it must move in harmonic chords if it moves at all. The old one-string melody of national egoism has vanished with the economic credulities of yesterday. Okay, now you got to understand how they talk. This is symbolic. It must move in harmonic chords. That together, that community, that group life, the group cell, not the individual cell of free society, but the group, the community of cells, and the international community of cells, not working together for the common good, for the community, international community, not the evil, individualistic, national egoism. The one-string melody. It took 4 years of fighting. It cost the world 20 million lives. It practically exhausted the economic possibility of the earth to trample the mad delusions of selfishness that all but wrecked the world. And I'm at 30 minutes now. I want to cut this because this phone will cut me off. I will finish this, and it'll only take me probably not even 5 minutes. Thank you.